In this first episode of the Dust Cells Podcast International, I have the pleasure of talking with Gordon L. Schmitz, a good friend, successful theater producer, and author. We discuss several movies like the Beetlejuice sequel. Furthermore, we share insights of our work and learn a lot about Gordon's career and life as a traveler, mad and married man. And now the dust may settle. I'm really happy to have you here, Gordon.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're happy to be here. Okay. And it's been a long time, I guess.
Yeah.
When you were here in my town and on the countryside. I'm getting into the language with some accents. Figuring out some southern accent and maybe
a southern accent. Yeah,
I know how it is. Okay, but this is the first episode in English. I guess I would call it Dust Cells Podcast International. I'm curious. Let's start with Beetlejuice. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I was watching it, the second part.
Yeah.
Did you see the second movie?
Yes. I saw it a few weeks ago in Previews. I couldn't wait, so it was important for me to get the first ticket for the first screening in town.
Crazy.
I saw it in IMAX and I loved it.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it?
Oh yes, yeah. It's not just a great sequel, but it works as the perfect season opener for Halloween.
Right, I think so too. I was very I had a really good day also at this last Thursday I was there, and it was really fun. I was in good company, and even without the good company, it was really great. I had expected everything because remakes that are 40 years old are quite weird sometimes, disappointing even. But similarly to, in my opinion, like XLF on Netflix, it was Beetlejuice 2 really hit the right buttons. It's funny, it's entertaining, it's respectful to the original source material, I would say, to Beetlejuice 1, even though there are some things like the couple that was in the first part, the first movie that wasn't there. But there was some convenient solution to not involve them in the story. And also, as the father of Lydia, also with the shark bite and so on. Also, we're spoiling here everything. So if you don't want to get any spoilers, just leave now. Yeah,
I think when this podcast is released, the movie has been out for 2 months or something. So we should not worry too much about spoilers.
Yeah, but I don't know. I believe there are even people that would think that spoilers from movies that are 40 years ago, like Beetlejuice 1, that aren't allowed. So, but I'm always spoiling everything, so I don't give a shit.
So just to state it clear, Lydia in the new movie has a daughter, Astrid, and her boyfriend turns out to be undead and wants to switch souls so he can stay in the real world. So now I spoiled the movie.
Who would have guessed?
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I thought the plot twist, if you want to call it like that, it was a little bit on the nose, but that's not an issue in a movie like Beetlejuice 2, I would say. It's not an Inception or something like that. It's more you want to get involved into the world, immerse yourself in it, and have a laugh. And I mean, I don't know, the character of Willem Dafoe's, what was it, Jack William? I don't know what his name was so fantastic and funny. Is that you don't bother when something like a plot is a little bit on the nose, like with the boyfriend.
No, but with the boyfriend, it wasn't even the big secret. It's basically resolved after 20 minutes if you have not caught up on it at that point. So it's not like they build the whole movie around that. It's basically a way to get the characters to the other side and to have them reunite.
Right. And I think they didn't do it terrible or anything. I think it was a little bit on the nose. I even thought at first that he was alive and his parents were only ghosts, and therefore there would be a moral way to communicate to the daughter of Lydia. I forgot her name.
Yeah, Astrid.
Astrid, thank you. That Astrid might get a new view on the whole point with ghosts and the undead and so on. And but then that he's a psychopath in that age, I was like, okay, I didn't see that coming. So it wasn't as terrible. And as you said, it was more like a way to get into the undead world, and it was a really cool ride. It felt a little bit like relaxed joyride,
a roller coaster.
Yeah, kind of like that. I really enjoyed that ride. It was even better from the entertaining level than the first one, I'd say.
Yeah, I get that. Yes. Also because we are more in for the ride. Beetlejuice is a character so familiar to us through the original movie, through the TV show, through the musical, through his position in pop culture, that we know what's coming. And we are willing to trust the ghost with the most to see where he will lead us.
Yeah, what he will do for tricks and what he will say. And I just remembered Danny DeVito's, I don't know, a little scene in the movie. I didn't expect to see Danny DeVito in the movie. And then he was so perfectly put as this janitor, just doing his stuff. And then, hey lady, what are you doing here? I really liked him there, and I think he never was as undead or weird as in I mean the last time I saw him like that maybe was as the Penguin, and that's crazy.
And he channeled the Penguin. He drank some goo, he grunted, he waddled around. That was that was Oswald in the afterlife, let's face it.
Also Tim Burton, right?
Yeah,
that's the Tim Burton juice,
Yeah.
The Beetlejuice, the Tim Burton juice. And I think, I mean, it wasn't a perfect movie. I really enjoyed it, but there was a little bit too much. I think I heard it several times now, but and then I agree, because that's what I thought at the end of the movie. It was a little bit too much. They wanted to a lot, like his first marriage, then the thing with Lydia, he wanted to marry her again. And then there was this, I hated Rudy, or what's his name was. He was the fiance of Lydia. Yeah. He was made to be hated, similar to Joffrey from Game of Thrones. He was, everything he said, everything he did was maybe even sometimes with good intentions, but mostly it was for his own purpose, as he later would say, for his own benefit. And it was hard to listen to anything he said. I mean, the proposal on the what was it, on the funeral, cringe-tastical, boy.
I think the stories they told were not only necessary for the plot, but moments like the flashback to Beetlejuice when he was alive.
That was cool.
Were moments people just were waiting for. It's not just fan service. They really avoided fan service. But why tell a second story with Beetlejuice if you cannot say something new about that character? Especially when we know we probably will not see him again on the big screen. So why not just give us a few of those answers to the questions that maybe the first movie didn't ask, but that we, because he became such a character in popular culture, have asked ourselves over time. And it was funny because I went to see the movie with my sound designer, Luca Castaldo, brilliant guy. He's Italian. And when, Beetlejuice turned out to be Italian, that was not just a weird special moment, but as I saw the movie, of course, in English with Czech subtitles, that's usual here, I still don't know what Beetlejuice actually said in that scene, because the subtitles were in Czech. I'm not that fluent in Czech. So I turned to Luca later, and, the first thing he said was, I knew it. And the second thing was, you basically got the story. So I'm looking forward to see the movie again. Maybe next time when I'm in Germany, we can do a double feature, the both of us, and then I will finally get all the little
analyze everything.
Yeah, then I will finally get everything. Yeah.
Yeah, totally into. I saw it in OV, as an original voice also, and
Yeah.
as I remember the scene in Italian, that was Beetlejuice starts to talk about his origin story, or as how he met his first wife, and
Yeah.
that he's actually he all everything you saw he just expressed in
Uh,
Italian, so that he was what was it, Leichenfledderer, what's the
yeah.
uh,
I know what you want to
yeah, you
express.
know what you, but the listener may not know that he's grave robber or something like that,
Yeah.
and that's what he said actually in Italian. Oh, I was a grave robber, and there was some comments like, "Oh, you don't need that anymore," and something like that.
Mm,
And following with, he met this beautiful woman, and
mm,
that she was, surprise, surprise, a cultist, and she just wanted his soul of someone that loved her, apparently, as I recall, and therefore she killed him with the poison to get his soul,
yeah.
and he killed her simultaneously. And that's it. There wasn't very much details, as I recall, that that was so important to this. But we can analyze that again when you're here in Germany.
Good.
Anytime, just call. Yeah, but I think that, what is it? Was it Monica Bellucci? I think
Mm,
it was a
yes.
little bit just, her part was, I mean, you present her in the movie at first, and she kills Danny DeVito's character more or less, uh,
Yeah.
makes him a pancake into a pancake, and then she disappears for most of the movie. Is then at the middle end she's back and is hunting him quite slowly, I guess. There are funny scenes all the time. She's used in a good sense with Bob, for example, the buddy from Beetlejuice, and on the then she's on in the finale shortly. I think she could have benefited from more screen time or more story, but then the movie would be longer. And I thought they tried to tell a little bit much, and they might have make two movies even if they wanted to, if the money was there and so on. Yeah,
If you
but
look at
in general or in total, still a great movie. Didn't take
Yeah,
anything.
if you look at her story, why this wife character is there, it basically answers the question: what if Lydia would have married Beetlejuice in a way, in a twisted way? It's like, okay, this bastard Beetlejuice has a bad reputation in the afterlife. We know that in the
Mm,
netherworld.
mm.
So, what does that actually mean? That he's just a pest for his former superior? No, we see that this is someone who, even in the last moments of his life, was willing to chop off a person. So it's nice that he is really not intimidated by, well, by
Anything.
death, by dying, by people standing in front of him, who have just poisoned him, by cops who hunt him, or by the living. Never trust the living, but he clearly has never been the popular one with the people close to him,
Mm.
neither in life nor in afterlife.
I think the aesthetic also is still really unique.
Yeah.
The 40 years. I mean, how old is Tim Burton now? And he still makes stuff that you know it's Tim Burton, and not in a still nostalgic. Yes, because it's so long there now. But in a, I don't know how to express it. It's very nice to. It's like a house on the end of the street that you know. Oh, the old Burton lives there. Let's
Yeah.
let's see it again. Let's check it out. Oh, he has this new Halloween stuff there. Cool. It's a really nice feeling to know that he's still there, that he does stuff and he does it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is not just back, but he is happy. You see that
Yeah.
not just when you see him on the red carpet, etc. He hasn't looked that happy in many years, but the movie just expresses how much fun it was to go back to his ghoulish
Mm.
origins, that it doesn't look glossed over, that he didn't try to reinvent the netherworld, in a different style or different technology or different approach. That he said, no, no, this is it. Let's make it as ghoulish, ghastly, ghostly, weird, and in some ways even funny as possible.
It's funny that you said that he seems more enjoyable or more happy. Was he depressed or was he? Also, do you know anything about the past, I don't know, 20 years about him or?
Well, he was very unhappy with the studio system. So even when he was handed, millions and millions and millions of dollars and franchises, he felt miserable because he said, "I'm just chewing out products. I'm not
Mm,
working as an artist there. I'm just giving Tycoon the soulless, heartless product that he wants." And he felt, yeah, like he was sped out
producing.
by the system, just standing at the side, looking back at how unique his creative vision once was. And the only thing he could do now, so in the last, let's say, 10 years or what, were those big tentpole movies. And he hated them.
So like Alice in Wonderland, that was a movie from him, yes?
Yes, Alice in Wonderland, he did Dumbo, the live action remake, which he himself seems to find to be the low point of his career.
Crazy, okay.
Yeah,
Because it
yeah.
was quite
So,
popular, wasn't it?
yes, but people apparently felt, and he did, which is much more important, that there was simply no heart in it, and that he could return to what is basically an expensive, spooky movie
Yeah.
that signals that he is ready to go back to those just weird and
Mm.
strange movies. Now, of course, that Beetlejuice is such an enormous international hit, they will probably lure him in with, another 500 million budget
Mm.
project or whatever. And so I hope he can now break the circle.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, this problem is very familiar to myself. With you're an artist as well, so you might know it too. In a way, this dynamic between you want to create something. In my case, I don't want to talk for you, so I talk for myself. In my view, it's like I want to give something from myself and internally, externally, and it's a process of creating a little bit like birth.
Yeah,
And there is not the component of money that I prioritize or that
mm,
I even care for in the process. And
yeah,
but then the reality kicks in and you have to survive somehow and eat stuff.
yeah,
And therefore you need money, and that's the issue. Reality versus the fantasy, the art, if you will. And
yeah,
therefore I can really understand from Tim Burton's view this dichotomy, if it's the right word,
mm,
to want to be an artist, to create something, not involving what's popular or what brings money or what works, but what is true to itself and true to what you want to bring. And yeah, that can really F you up if you sell your soul in a way.
yeah.
I don't know, how is it with you?
I always say it's show business, not show wasting my money. Um, but I'm a producer, so I'm not just a creative person who wants to express himself. I am someone who has to take care of financial issues and brings everyone together to create a work of art, hopefully a work of art in the end. So I have to make a living out of it. And I also have the responsibility of making sure that everyone who works for me also can say that was worthwhile. This was not just a hobby. Yes, actors usually say, I'm not doing it for the money, but if an actor says that, I'm already skeptical because from my experience, the moment that they do not get enough money out of a show, they will be pissed. So I prefer people to be honest and just say, look, it is a job. I do not need much to, I do not have to make much out of this project, but in the end, it is a job. Then people say, oh, no, it's just for the art. And there's also for me the issue that when I have to pay a theater and I have to pay for advertising and I have to pay all the actors and of course have to pay my rent, that I can pay my rent. Yeah. As an example, I have an offer right now on the table from a location. I was approached by them to stage a play there. I did before, and it turned out that the owner of the place demands rent that is so high that I would have to take so much money from the audience members that I would have to charge an entrance fee as high as performances in the National Theater of Prague. But even then, I have not even made more than, let's say, I would pay for breakfast after I've paid everyone and everything. So as wonderful as certain opportunities are, I'm not there to waste anyone's time. And I know colleagues who are, well, willing to rent a 600-seat theater and have just 30 people in the audience to give the actors a great opportunity. But they are, they get their funding, they get their money from sites and organizations and everything, and that's fine. It's for the actor's experience. So yes, I have to keep that in mind. I have to act in a responsible way towards everyone, towards the audience, so they don't have to pay too much for a ticket, towards the actors, towards the people behind the scenes. With Fright Night, as an example, I produced the European premiere of the official stage adaptation of Fright Night, a popular horror movie from the 1980s I have never seen because I don't watch horror movies, modern horror movies. We had 20 people involved on the stage and behind the scenes, and they had to get paid. So that is something I always have to keep in mind.
I find it very interesting now. I mean, I know you like 5-7 years now, and I always saw you as more like the adventurous spirit that which you are, that is there for the art, to see the art and but now that I hear your work, your process, your privilege, and your duty to care for others makes you more like, as a producer, like a mother, like someone that you need to take care that everybody can have what they need, that they can work, that they can be the best version of themselves in the situation, like the actors and I don't know who else. There are so many people that you have to take care as a producer, I guess. And what I saw was always that everybody liked being around you and with you and talk with you, and you are a very joyful person. And yeah, that's very nice to see that you have this connection to people and that you take care of them. Or maybe that's what I see now, that comes also from this power, from this process and your duty or whatever, that you take care of people, that they trust you, that they like you and being around you. And that's a very interesting new angle to see you.
What I did with every production up until now is that I would have not just a table read, but a dinner afterwards, or that we would get together the evening before performance, first rehearse everything in my living room, then have dinner together, and, well, as it happened before, have a party afterwards. One evening, we were listening to swing music. We're sitting around the table, having a drink after
great
dinner.
Time.
And someone...
Yeah.
What?
It was a great time. I was once there. It was really, really cool.
Yeah. And one evening, an actor said, listening to the music, "Oh, you know what? I would love to dance." And so we just put all the furniture aside and had a dance party in the middle of my living room.
Mm.
I want the actors and all the creators involved to feel comfortable and feel that they are a part of this team, that it's not just a job and not just a day job, but that you meet like-minded people who, if they do horror theater, obviously are a bit damaged. No, that was a joke. So it's one thing if I do one series project or if I know I have an intense evening filled with very intimate horror stories on stage.
Mm.
Those people should know each other on a more intimate basis than people who just stage a comedy and just quote unquote, don't get me wrong, because to do good horror theater, you have to have wonderful comedic skills. But when you already laugh on stage and at rehearsals, well, you feel comfortable around the other person when you know that you will be in a psychological and physical tense situation with another person, let's say the next night. You need to not just trust them when you're on stage, but say, going on stage, that is someone I share a connection with, even beside me killing him.
It reminds me of an interview that I saw from two actors, and there was this similar topic that I mean, actors often are emotional people and sensitive people, and they need that to engage with the other person in the act, in the scene. And if they always have this trust issue, that's what I recall from the podcast that I heard from the two actors, then you can't really give it your best in the scene, because you don't know, will there be consequences, negatively or negative consequences, something that will bother you. And therefore I think it's really cool, back to you with how you bring everyone together and how you welcome them and give them the feeling of being welcome. I think that's really is fruitful a word? It's a very, very good feeling, I think, that spreading around everyone, and that they can be comfortable to really give their best. I think that's very wise.
It's also a way of saying thank you, because I sometimes do plays that we rehearse for 2 months, and sometimes when I have those Grand Guignol, so Parisian theater of horror-like presentations of new horror short plays, the idea is that those plays are fastly written, fastly rehearsed, and staged once. So those people learned their lines in a short time. Then they met maybe 4 afternoons, and then they're already willing to bring it to the stage. So there's a lot of pressure on them. And I want to show them my appreciation for creating something that, well, in the true sense of the word, will be unique.
So, but you have the Prague Horror Theater, right?
Yes, I'm the artistic director of 2 Prague theater companies, and one of them is the Prague Horror Theater.
The other is the Hamburg Horror Theater?
No, the other is the Mad&Merrymen.
Right, the Mad&Merry, yes.
Yeah. When it comes to the horror theater, we were originally founded in Germany, in Cologne, 13 or nearly 14 years ago, and then moved around the country for 2 years, and then settled in Hamburg. Yeah. So wherever I settle down, I take this group with me, and so it becomes the Kölner, the Horror Theater on tour, the Hamburger Horror Theater, and now the Prague Horror Theater.
Where the dust settles. Yeah, but horror. You just said that you're not really watching horror, so why did you start with horror?
You
mentioned Beetlejuice once to me, that there was some connection, but
so it's weird in a way. Let's talk about the horror movie Beetlejuice 2. But yes, I don't watch horror movies. So the case is, when I was a child, I saw the first Beetlejuice movie, and that kindled my interest in the macabre and later the Gothic. So my theater work is theater work. I do not care for modern horror movies. I don't watch them. I'm not someone who says, "Oh, I would love to do horror movies, but I'm not a filmmaker. Let's do theater." No. And I keep all the influences that come from cinema away from my plays in case the stories I bring to the stage have been adapted into movies before. So I always tell the actors, okay, we have a story that was also adapted by this and this director recently, so it's on everyone's mind. Don't watch it. And we try to avoid certain similarities and such. So it's really about the medium of theater. It's really all about the stage.
Yeah, it's about the artistic expression more than about the anxiously feeling, I would assume, right?
No. Well, I would say it depends on the play, but
Mm.
it's not about jump scares and it's not about blood. But
Yeah, it's not a slasher stuff that you do,
no.
right?
If you just kill people for 2 hours on stage, or if they are bathing in blood all the time, or if there's constant violence, people shut down. The audience shuts down. They are not moved by that anymore. They are shocked for a moment. Oh, they're moved in some way by terrible crime. But if that happens every 10 to 15 minutes over the course of a show, they will shut down and say, "Yeah, been there, done that." It doesn't move them. That is not what it's about. So it's about, for me as an artist, a way to manipulate the audience even. That is always fun, but it's an artistic challenge. And for the audience, it's an evening of thrill rides and unsuspected moments of honest, true feelings that they maybe would not have thought they would encounter on stage when they heard, "Oh, it's horror theater." If it's not character driven, it doesn't make sense to spill even a drop of blood.
Yeah,
And
right. Because you have to care for a person to nowadays you have to care for a person to get yourself involved into the story, to immerse in the story, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So when
Yeah.
I was offered the right to Fright Night, I mentioned that the official adaptation of this 80s cult movie, I said, well, on the surface level, that doesn't sound interesting to me. Oh, a teenager in suburbia is convinced that his next door neighbor is a vampire. No one wants to believe him. And he tries to get help from an actor who is a horror host and once played a vampire hunter in the movies. Yeah, that doesn't sound that exciting to me, to be honest. But when I found my angle, when I found that all those characters' arcs are about identity, finding their identity, living up to a false identity or what other people saw in them, everything came together.
That's the focus point and the point of identification for the viewer.
I didn't have to rewrite a single line or anything, but in casting a trans actress and transsexual actress in one of the lead roles, in the role of the main character's best friend, who is always bullied and shunned because of his interest in the macabre, I had put enough on stage to make it clear what this really was about. Because I didn't, it wouldn't work if I just say, "Oh yeah, that is a horror geek and he's bullied." Yeah, nowadays geek
everyone
movies
is.
make $1 billion at the box office. The stage version in America made him into a goth kid. And I thought, well, that's a bit too easy. I have many goth friends. I have many friends who really are part of that subculture, colleagues who made a living out of that. It doesn't feel right just to say, "Oh yeah, you're goth now." But when I saw this trans actress and it clicked and I saw it's all about identity. And so without, again, even addressing the transsexual aspect, there was the central character who feels alienated, who is misunderstood, who is bullied and shunned even by his closest friends. Yes, not just because he is an eccentric geek, but he or she is the other. The character in the play was a he. So everything fell into place and we were sold out. It was a tremendous joy, and it's something that I, from time to time, find people are still talking about here in Prague, though that was a few years ago.
I think it's also just a smart move, not in some calculating way, but in a that matters to people, that touches people, and identity and what a pattern of someone of like being a horror enthusiast was something else in the 80s or 60s even than today.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
therefore that was back then a topic, and today it's not as much, or if even a topic. So there are lots of horror enthusiasts and they are celebrated just because they
yeah,
are who they are. But then to take that part in the adaptation and to
mm,
say, look, how do we make it still relatable and so that everyone can, or that people can understand what's about. I think that's just a smart, relatable move to make. That's what I think is a big part of storytelling, or in this case, theatrical work.
yeah. When I take any kind of play from, let's say, the Grogniol archive, so a horror play from Paris that is over 100 years old, I cannot just put it on stage as it was back then. First, certain things just don't work anymore.
Mm.
Certain frightening or funny moments won't be understood by a modern audience because the
Mm.
Gong and Yol back then made sure that those things were relatable. They worked with the fears of the audience, the fears of modern inventions, of scientific or industrial progress, such things.
Yeah.
So I have to take that into consideration. So what could this play mean for modern audiences on the superficial, so on the, let's say, entertainment level? But
Mm.
then I have to look, okay, why could this be frightening on this deeper level? What can I do with a text? Let's call it historic text,
Mm.
so that a modern audience will not just get why it was so interesting back in the day, but will be moved in the same way as the audience 100 years ago. And sometimes that lies in the casting. That sometimes lies just in, in gender swapping a character, and suddenly a scene of violence becomes much more disturbing or empowering, or it becomes something that beforehand was just frightening and now becomes disturbing to, let's say, a whole other part of the audience. Because of reflection, because of fashion, because of sociological progress, whatever it is. But just to take what once worked and put it on stage certainly won't work in horror theater, not when when you're making a career out of it.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Reminds me of it's documentary I saw about Dracula, and
Oh,
I mean you're a big enthusiast of Dracula, um,
yeah.
a little bit, and
Mhm.
that's I think maybe what you want to say or include in your or whatever. What's relatable to what you said is that back then in the 18th century, so what was it, Victorian times, whatever,
Yeah.
when the industrial revolution came and the electricity and the night was lit up with light bulbs and
Yeah.
everything, the day came into the
Yeah.
night. Then there was this superstition that grew, the fear of the things that lurked in the shadows, because now we were awake at night more often, and
Mm.
people back then, and therefore what was lurking there, some werewolves, some undead, some vampires in that case, and therefore if you wrote Dracula back then, or you wouldn't make it maybe as personal as it now is. I mean, what was Bram Stoker's? Is it always Stoker's?
Stoker, yeah.
It's back then it was more about the horror itself, about the symbolized cruel nature, like a tornado, or like some it's an supernatural energy thing, and like the devil itself. And that was the horror, that was the thing that entertained the people back then, and therefore you could tell a story in that way. And today you have to make it more personal, because one, we saw everything. Everyone saw everything at some point in some way, and they have to relate. So two, you make it personal in that you show who was Dracula or what makes Dracula tick. And then you have something like Blood is Lives, and you have a mystery to that point in the Netflix series, short series or mini series or show. That was, yeah, I think that is a good. That was what you were talking about a little bit.
Yeah, what happened after the Industrial Revolution was that the mystery of everyday life was gone. So churches lost their influence on people. We had science as part of everyday life. We had electric light later on coming over.
That is no.
So yes, that is why there were so many spiritual groups, from Freemasons to Rosicrucians to you have modern quote unquote occultists. You had spiritualists who tried to communicate with their dead. You had even fairy belief. That is why at that time all those big Gothic novels were written, like Dracula, for example, or Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and later, at the beginning of the 20th century, even the Phantom of the Opera. That is why you suddenly had historism in architecture, so older styles on newer buildings. People tried to get the mysterious back into their everyday life, be it in saying, okay, we have to surround ourselves with the with traditions of old and rituals, or in saying, okay, let's bring the seemingly supernatural into our modern world. Or even to say, let's decorate our cities with symbols of old, with ornaments and frescoes and mythical creatures and things only the initiated will understand. That is why all those things happened, let's say, between 1840 and the beginning of the First World War. That was the people's reaction to losing the mysterious, the shadow, even in their own home, where once you could only light your bedroom with a gas lamp and there were shadows everywhere. Now you could switch on a light bulb and you knew that there was no monster in the corner.
Yeah, it's weird. I thought about, while you were talking, I thought about this. There are also components that are universal, like the fear of the unknown. And then there are things that you can tell, like, oh, there are monsters and their monsters look like that. And then I thought there are horror movies or stories that are horrific, but maybe not horror movies. I don't know, because they're more scientific or more psychological. And then we get to maybe thriller, and then you have, or psychothriller even, and then you have the component of the unknown within yourself because of the psychological factor. And how interesting just it is to watch how everything evolves, how the story and what you tell and how you can tell it and how you can involve the viewer into the story. I think it's very interesting just to think about it, maybe from an artistic perspective, as an author myself. And it's just, yeah, very interesting. I think about Paranormal Activity, for example. I don't know. Have you watched Paranormal Activity ever?
I watched the first one because my wife loves it, and so I was talked into that, and I really loved it, and it was so successful compared, especially to what I read the other parts.
Yeah.
So I've only seen the first one because it came from a very personal perspective. The writer and director, it was produced as an indie movie and then bought and the final scene reshot by a big studio. He was afraid of ghosts. And
Oh.
so he made a movie to face his fears. And this is exactly why this movie works so well. It was made by someone who was trying to work through his fears, his maybe even trauma, and grappled with those ideas, those images. So we find those things so disturbing because they were the things that frightened the author, the player, the author, the screenwriter.
I never knew that. I always,
Yeah.
after a conversation with you, I know 10 more things than I knew before. And I'm just like, huh, okay, that's the next level stuff right there. Okay, he was scared, and it's a little bit like what I do with my comic called Parasense, this topic of personal elements, putting it in a different light, maybe, and then just coping at some point or in some way. That's really interesting. I think I see art as communication, as something that comes from you, from your perspective of what you perceive, and then you tell it in a way with some kind of medium, in words and pictures and so on. And that's therefore, I think, healthy and teaching to people. Yeah, really interesting. The fear of ghosts. I never knew that. I just thought it was really effective movie, the first one especially because it's so minimalistic. You could think you are it, you are living it, and and I mean afterwards, after you see the movie or while you are seeing the movie, you are the first time, you're just thinking, oh, there was a noise in my house. What was that? You're in this world because this world is so close to the real world. And that's I mean, back to what makes a story immersive or successful is that to lose yourself in it, to feel the connection. And therefore, back to, if you have a character that is making that or giving that, it's beneficial, it's smart.
As absolutely the best, especially, I mean, in every storytelling, but for me, especially on the stage, a way to immediately, tear down barriers and fences between me and the audience, or what's happening on stage and the audience. In the French theater for Grand Guignol, supernatural elements are not involved. It's about the realistic depiction of violence. Because once you bring in the supernatural element, it becomes unbelievable. Nowadays, of course, as you said, through pop culture, we all have seen everything. There are Grand Guignol plays, modern ones, produced by different groups, even by me, that includes supernatural things, but the horror can never come from the supernatural element. It always has to come from how people react to that, because the audience is hopefully never on the side of the killer.
Okay, I'm not not on the side of the killer, no.
So give them not necessarily someone to relate to, but someone to feel with. That can be the killer in the end. There can be twists or whatever. But when I have let's say a cardboard character, so mustache twisting villain on stage, just say we have something or someone like that on stage, I really hope that the audience finds him interesting, but does not cheer for him.
Right.
In Grand Guignol, at least, when you put a dark and twisted character at the center of a play, you can root for him when it makes sense.
I think it's very interesting that you said you want to root for him, but you shouldn't. I think you said something like you shouldn't want to be like him, or maybe I'm paraphrasing. I don't. But I'm losing myself in my thoughts parallel to listening to you, because I can relate to what you say. I mean, I thought about Dexter and Joe Goldberg from You, or Thanos from Infinity Wars. You understand the character, you understand the villainous or the anti-hero or the anti-villain or whatever you want to call it. And you root for him in some sense, because let's take Dexter. He kills killers primarily, and he just tries to cope with his need to kill, and that's primarily what his issue is and what he does and how he's coping. And we are engaged in it because we understand how it is to be different, to try to fit into a normal world, where there are expectations of everyone. We have to be morally good, like Kant always wanted to that we are all good and believed that we are, and that's how we are creating the world as a society. And if you have this character that you can identify with, that is morally gray or even evil actually, then you as a storyteller want to communicate most often. I mean, how do I put it? You don't want your viewer to be morally ambiguous or evil. You don't want psychopath to watch your stuff and cheer for it. You want normal people to look at their dark side. I mean, maybe that's my perspective, but I can imagine you want to let people into their darker shades in themselves, and then explore it through the character, and then show them, but we live in a morally world. We live in a world where we try to be better, and therefore this character, if he stays with his dark tendencies, he will not succeed in this world. And this is, I mean, maybe a little bit of responsibility that we have as storytellers to communicate that, but it's also, in my opinion, it's something I want to. I mean, it's a little bit like the hero has to be a monster. The hero has to be a monster because you can only be good if you choose to be good, and you can only choose to be good if you've been evil or you know how to be evil.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to work in a genre where I can really work with deal with such interesting villains, twisted characters, seemingly bad guys.
What are you working now? Maybe what are you working on now? But maybe I know some things. Maybe you want to tell some things. I mean, if this episode comes in November, maybe we can be the listeners can be happy about something.
When this comes out in November, I will just have had 2 plays on stage in October with Horror Theater group. One is a new presentation of Going Your Plays. It will be the 10th presentation I've produced over the last 13 years, and I'm already quite excited about that. I have found some marvelous new directors, great actors I have worked with before, but who are also new to the team and who come from such different backgrounds as even opera.
Will there be singing?
No. So when I work with local directors, it's often people who usually work on, let's say, the small stage. As Prague has 40 official theaters, and most of them are small, intimate theaters. And to have someone who usually stages operas in Vienna and Berlin to come and do that will, of course, bring a whole new perspective on, I think, what we as an ensemble can do when it comes to Rognol, can approach those topics on a small stage. And that's always important for me. Bring not the typical artists who work in this field into a team, but bring people who have a grander view of what the medium is or can be, and confront them with maybe not the limitations of certain evenings, but the challenges of a smaller location, of a genre they have not worked with, or the fact that it should be a realistic depiction of violence instead of something that is abstract. So I'm really looking forward to that. Then there will be Master of the Trapdoors, which we already did last year, which is a one-man evening about the backstory of the Phantom of the Opera. So forget masks or deformities. It's just an actor in a dark suit on stage telling his life story. So again, no scare jumps and no kitsch, no candles, no overtly gothic elements so many people nowadays expect when they hear the Phantom of the Opera. But what I'm already working on is, because those plays I will only produce, is The Marvelous Land of Oz. It's an adaptation of the second Oz book by Lyman Frank Baum, released 120 years ago. So no Dorothy, no wizard, no cowardly lion. We will do that as a family play around Christmas. Parts of it will go to charity. Last year we did our version of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol.
Right.
And we had all the box office handed over to a charity. Here we will have a larger cast, a bigger theater. We will have more elaborate stagings. It will be performed several times. So it's a different beast, but I insisted on giving part of it to charity again. And while we are talking right now, especially the Czech Republic is ravaged by terrible floods. Prague is safe, whole landscapes are underwater, and the same goes for Poland and other regions around the Czech Republic. So I have a feeling I know what charity will receive our donations this year.
Yeah, I remember I saw one play. I saw Murder on the Orient Express, which until today is maybe one of the, if not the best play I've seen ever.
Thank you.
I'm not really often in the theater to watch a theater. I work in the theater, so but on the side. But I saw quite a bit, quite a lot. And the ones that I remember are always those where you feel the connection of the people, where you feel the trust in the room, where you feel something honest and rich from the actors and the producers and the people that are involved, that are communicated to the viewer. And that is what I got from your play. And not only because I know you or so, I'm a really harsh critic sometimes. Therefore, in that moment, I felt just like a passenger, or not a passenger, maybe a passenger, maybe not, but not like I was in front of a TV, not like in a cold, just professional theater act, but in a real thought out story that is told to me. And because it wasn't 1,000 people in the room, but it was quite private, I felt as a guest welcomed and special. And that is a feeling that is a service, which I saw or felt. And I think you did it quite creative as well. Professionally, no question, but creative as well for the viewers, because it was in a train. It played in a train, and we had guests that sat on one side of the room and guests on the other side, and therefore it was, from my view, like we were birds and watching inside of the train or something like that.
Yes,
how you were moving and so on. It was quite immersive in a way.
That was the concept. So for everyone, we did it as an immersive staging. We played in the middle of the audience in a ballroom, so there was a lot of space, and the audience was sitting left and right. So we played mainly in the middle, like we were actually in the train and people were looking into the train. So we had minimal sets. We only had the suitcases and a bar compartment at the T sections on one side. And whenever people needed to go to the bar compartment or left, or there was any kind of action, it always had to happen in the middle. It always happened through the audience.
Yes.
And so there was not this typical distance you have, let's say, curtain up, curtain down. And that's what, according also to audience feedback, made it so intense.
I think also the place that I had, or I mean, if I would have been there more often, I mean, you played it what, 5, 7 times? I don't know how many.
Yeah, several times. I
several
can't
times.
remember right now. Yeah, several times.
More than once. So, and
yes.
if I would have sit on another place in the same play, A Murder on the Orient Express from Mad of Merry Men, right?
Yeah, The Mad
Yeah,
and Merry Men.
yeah. And I think would be a totally new experience just by sitting somewhere else because
Yeah.
you made it so because that was part of the experience. Where are you sitting and how are you viewing therefore the people, the actors working the craft. It was really smart, really. And of course, like I said, I really felt the energy in the room, not only because you are so close to the actors. I mean, we had to watch sometimes because I am a very comfortable sitter. I had to watch that I'm not spreading my legs too far in front, so that nobody would fall or something. Maybe I'm paranoid, but there was therefore the energy directly towards me, and that's why it's really one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Thank you so very much, really.
Yeah. And I remember that sometimes I see your stuff that you post on Instagram and so on. I think I remember how you expressed that your last Christmas play was really intimate and something completely different than you wanted it to be, and therefore it was even better, wasn't it?
That was another play, but at the same location. That was Baron Munchausen Between the Stars.
Right, that was it.
So yeah, my last play before the summer break. We are just coming back from the summer play. We are just coming back from the summer break here in Prague. That was a Baroque spectacle. So it was presented as if we, as the Madame Merry Men, were a theater group that travels through Europe in Baroque or Rococo times and stopped in Prague. So we had opera singers from the National Theatre, we had a chamber orchestra, we had hand-painted backdrops, we had sounds that were created live on stage. We had historical costumes that we rented from the Barandov, which is the local film studio here, the biggest theater or the biggest costume storage in all of Europe, in fact. And we had planned it for a very wide stage, open air up on Vyšehrad, which is the old high castle here in Prague. So we do not just have Prague Castle, which is the seat of government, but there are old ruins on the other side of the river. And that it's a huge area with the theaters, with restaurants, with cafes, with a church, with a chapel, with all the walls and museums and and a school and whatever. And I had picked a date that I thought was safe because it hadn't rained in years on that date.
Yeah.
Well, 2 weeks before the performance, it became clear that it would most likely rain heavily during our open air performance.
Yeah.
I was able to, in the last minute, relocate the play inside to their inside venue. Thing is, we had already sold much more tickets than the theater had seats.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because it was for a wide open air stage, not for a rather intimate indoor stage. So the indoor theater has a bit over 100 seats, and we had sold many more tickets. So I knew the location as we did A Christmas Carol there. I knew there were additional chairs behind the scenes and some people that stood at the back, and everything was fine. But it changed the whole concept because what was meant as a wide buffer, so a very broad comedy on a wide stage where people would stand far apart from each other, they now were rather cramped together. A very unusual stage because whoever administered it before the actual location, the Vyšehrad and the Ministry of Culture took over, built a balcony over the stage carried by columns on the stage. So half of the stage, for whatever reason, is roofed. So we couldn't use 90% of our scenery. The orchestra and singers had to sing on another balcony over the heads of the audience, so could not even be seen properly. The entrance wasn't a wide gate, but instead a very narrow door, which is complicated when you have a lot of actors in historical costumes, and gowns and armor and such things. So that was difficult at first to restage, but after the dress rehearsal, I said, okay, we have to do this, change this. That dance has to go to the end of the play. That costume is out. Such things.
In
And
what time frame did you had to make the changes suddenly?
well, the actors saw the venue, most of them, for the first time uh, a few hours before the
No
performance.
way.
Yeah, and there was only about 1 hour between the dress rehearsal and the end of the dress rehearsal, of course, and the start of the play.
Yeah.
So it really was last minute.
Wow. Okay, that
Yeah,
is crazy. And it but still it worked out. Even
it
better
became
than expected, or
yes, it became my favorite thing. My favorite thing of all the plays I've ever put on stage, and
wow.
I don't know, produced about
That's insane. That's the unexpected happened.
20 plays.
Wow, a
Yeah,
couple of hours earlier. Jesus.
yeah. It worked perfectly because it became not a play that was meant for a Baroque theater, but for tents, for weird artistic venues. It, in the end, was exactly what it should be. It was the best possible presentation of this play, and I'm very, very glad that we will bring it back next summer. So it was always meant to tour around, but first it had to be staged, filmed, and then we could ship it around, sell it to festivals.
And summer 25, will that
Yeah.
be on the big stage or back again at the little room?
That will be on different, let's say, alternative, smaller stages, but not just in Prague. So it will hopefully be seen in different countries
Oh,
around the Czech Republic.
okay, yeah, crazy. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
you will tell me again when it's time. Maybe you're a guest again until then. But
Yeah.
before we end this, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. For one, in regard to all the plays and all the things that you produce, and the core question for me is, what do you, in your words, hope that the people get or learn or feel thanks to your work?
That depends on the work. In some cases, I hope that they are not just moved, also that with every production, but that they will see the horror genre in a different way, um, that they will see certain works of literature we adapted in a different way, that they will even go back and, especially with the Madame Merry Men, buy the source material. That is something we will also address at the end of The Marvelous Land of Oz. The narrator will sit there and say, so if you like this story, or if you want to know what happens next, Lyman Frank Baum, the author of the Oz books, wrote 14 novels in total, and as it's Christmas time soon, I'm sure they would make a good present, you know. So it's not just I'm happy when they are engaged with what I do, but it would be wonderful if they get up and say, now I'm intrigued. I want to know more. I want
Hmm.
to read The Phantom of the Opera. I want to read up on the world of Oz. That what I bring on stage as a passion project may even start a passion in the audience. What my former co-writer back in Cologne once said is that my biggest strength is that I can transport my enthusiasm and I can make it clear to other people why I'm enthusiastic about a topic and can write a play that sparks the same kind of interest in the audience. So I always hope that they go and say, wow, that is not what I expected, because I wasn't aware of the depth of those characters and works and writings.
Hmm. It's quite nicely put from your colleague, because I would just agree. That's really how I see you, someone that makes just communicates good positive feelings, and primarily that there's more to be curious about and to be culturally more evolved, or if you want to put it in another way, culturally more aware what
Yeah.
else is in the world, what you can put to your life, or just share with others and inspire each other. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful thing. And therefore, now to my last question, just to wrap it up, and
Mm.
even to maybe in the purpose of your nature,
Yeah.
do you have a recommendation for a story, book, film, whatever it might be, even if it's just not a story, but a guide book or something, that you think everyone should experience, and why?
Yes, there is. One book I like to give to people is How Proust Can Change Your Life. It's about the writer Marcel Proust, but it's not about just his work or just him as a person. It's a small book written by a very popular philosopher, Alain de Botton, who takes apart Proust's work and says, what can we learn for us in our everyday life? Be reflective, be open for certain impressions. Maybe we should not value places, cities, venues, because someone we admire valued those places or wrote about those places or travel to those places. When you admire an artist, that happens a lot. You go on
Mm,
a pilgrimage, but should see our own surroundings with the same lens that those authors, in this case, of course, Proust,
mm,
viewed them. So you can go to a certain place and be, let's say, you can go to Paris and be disappointed that it's not like in your favorite books, instead of stepping back and say, okay, now I'm having my Paris experience. And even if you do not care or have never read Proust, that is something that gives you a good in manual, if you want,
mm.
to experience life in a more reflective, aware way, and how you can make experiences much more your own.
So the book is, as I understand, it's how Proust can change your life, and
Yeah.
it teaches you not to go places or see things just because someone that is popular or you like was there and saw this, and you're just a follower, but to look with your own eyes, to make
Yeah,
the
amongst
experiences yourself.
amongst other things. So it's basically about how you can learn to love life today, how to read properly, how to take time for things, how to suffer successfully, how to express your feelings, how to develop friendships, how to learn to see your surroundings in a much more aware way, how to be someone who sees with his own eyes, in
So not a book from Larry David.
fact. No, no.
No.
And again, it's about how to develop friendships. Yeah. So it's not.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's beautiful. No, I think that's a really nice book, to have a book that teaches you or shows you a way to be enriched even more by the things that you experience, whatever that might be. I think,
Yeah.
and whoever you might meet, and
Mm,
wherever and so on. I think that's
yeah.
really nice recommendation. Thank you for that. Thank you for being my guest today. I think maybe you have something you want to say at the end.
Whenever I am asked how I develop any kind of project, I always say I go back to the feeling I first had when I fell in love with a book, material, a story of any kind.
Hmm.
And I try to express that feeling that started it all. Not what came after that, not how or what I learned about it, but what made me fall in love with a story. And I think for everyone who is out there writing or being creative in any kind, that is something to hold on to. Because if we teach ourselves to express what we love about a story, we make other people fall in love with that too.
Yes. And you can never tell it more truthfully, I think.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Well, then let's go over to the German
Yeah.
in a second, and yeah, goodbye in
Goodbye.
English.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so very much for
Yeah.
giving me the opportunity to speak about those things.
Always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Then okay, goodbye Czech Republic. Goodbye English-speaking people. That was the first episode of Das International. Goodbye.